Wait, hold on. All Might? A failure? The symbol of peace? Are you stupid? Are you crazy? Are you stupid and crazy? Okay, I know the title is wild and seems insane. Most people think All Might was an infallible hero. But because I am apparently stupid and crazy, I don't agree. Not only did the guy have a lot of flaws, but he was outright harmful to society at large in many different ways. Let me explain. What's the point of heroism? It's to keep people safe, right? Safe from villainy and crime, so they can go about their lives without fear of those things. And All Might is no ordinary hero, he's the symbol of peace. Someone who deters crime from happening by just existing. And that's part of heroism, and especially of being the symbol as well. It's to extend your influence and make the world safer, not just in the places where you fight villains, but everywhere. It's to extend your influence throughout time and space. And that word is what's key here, and it's what makes All Might a failure. Influence throughout time. If All Might's existence leads to a long-term breakdown of the system and the promotion of villainy, that's a bad thing. And it did lead to a long-term breakdown of the system. And before we get into it, guys, only 4% of my viewers are subscribed, so if you like my content, please consider subscribing. It helps out the channel a lot. So, I just want to get this out of the way. I'm not doubting All Might's power. Everyone knows how strong this guy is. He's anime Superman, first guy to beat All for One, and I think up until this point, he was probably a good hero. But it's the way that he interacted with society, and the way he treated his own power and One for All, that makes him a bad one. And I think there's two main things I want to cover here. One, his influence on society, and two, his influence on Deku, his successor. So let's start with his influence on society. All Might ensured a golden age of peace in Japan, where criminals were so afraid that they didn't dare commit a crime out of fear. That's right, All Might stopped crime just by existing. He was also the first One for All user to actually beat All for One. All Might was the symbol of peace, a pillar that held up the entire hero society. And I think the pillar is a really good analogy here. A ceiling is usually held up by a bunch of pillars, working together to ensure stability, but All Might's pillar rose so high above everyone else's that he was able to hold up that ceiling of society all by himself. He left everyone behind, and fulfilled his goal of creating a world where heroes and the other pillars could slack off. His catchphrase was, "I am here," because as long as he was around, it was okay. But what if he wasn't around? What if he was not here? And this is the problem with All Might. A ceiling held up by a single pillar will fall over if that pillar ever vanishes. But All Might was egotistical to the point of never even considering his own failure as a possibility. But from the beginning, this was really silly. Not only could anything have happened to him at any time, like sudden illness or something else, but also, nobody had ever beaten All for One. Every previous user had died in the fight against him, and All Might had no reason to think he would be different. So him creating a societal over-reliance on him was stupid and ridiculous. Because of All Might being so ubiquitous and not helping society truly develop, they grew complacent and weak. Endeavor was the only one who could even come close, and even that was because Endeavor was a freaking maniac. You might say All Might can only do his job, which is fighting villains, but I disagree because All Might puts that expectation onto himself. He says that he wants to make the world a safer place, so you gotta hold him to that standard. In the long term, does he make the world safer or not? Here's an analogy for you. Let's say you're the captain of a sports team and it's your job to win games, and you're so good that your teammates slack off. Your job is more than performing by yourself on the court. You can average 1,000,000 points a game, but it means nothing if your team loses every game. Your job isn't to get stats, it's to win. Similarly, the job of the symbol of peace, by All Might's own admission, is not merely to save the day when you arrive. If the goal of a sports team is to win a championship, the goal of a hero, the goal of the best hero, is public safety on the macro level, even when you're not there in person. So that's what we should judge All Might by, macro level public safety. And to that end, I don't know if you could say he was all that effective, especially in the long term. His goal of creating an era where heroes aren't necessary wasn't just an unreasonable goal, but one that was actively harmful. By creating the illusion that heroes would never be necessary, he let them grow complacent. This is covered extensively when people say that nobody was seriously trying to catch up to All Might except for Endeavor. Okay, this might seem like a weird analogy, but have you guys heard of Michael Jordan? everyone knows MJ as the greatest basketball player of all time, but what people who don't follow basketball don't know is that for a while, Jordan was seen as a loser, individually talented, but someone who would never lead his team to a championship. He was selfish and irresponsible and didn't help or nurture his teammates. It was only following defeat after defeat that he realized he did need help from his teammates. And so, he helped train Scottie Pippen and trusted his teammates more and was rewarded with 6 championships and the iconic status you see today. I see All Might as a kind of Jordan-esque figure before Jordan learned his lessons. Someone whose individual talent would shine, but without elevating anyone else. Just as over-reliance on Jordan didn't get the Bulls anywhere, over-reliance on All Might left the My Hero Academia world in an incredibly precarious position. All Might needed to realize that it wasn't enough if he was there, it needed to be enough that anyone was there. Because that was the way to pervasive, lasting peace. Sure, not everyone had quirks as strong as One For All, but even if he trained other heroes to be strong as, say, Endeavor, or even encouraged them to stay vigilant, that would still be an incredible arsenal for peace. Which brings me to the next part of the video, All Might as a teacher and his management of One For All. First off, him giving the quirk to Deku was absolutely ridiculous. If you're really trying to promote the idea that one pillar should be enough for society to function, then that pillar needs to be as strong as possible. And given that, a quirkless teenager was definitely not the right choice. Mirio was working for his protege, hell even Night Eye would be amazing with One For All. He could have given it to Sun Eater or even another pro hero like Kamui Woods or Eraserhead. Can you imagine Eraser with One For All? The guy would be freaking unstoppable. All Might should have known how precarious of a situation society was about to be in, with him not having much time left as a hero, and so he should have given the quirk to someone who could have stood as the pillar faster, at the very least someone who wouldn't have to wait for bureaucratic nonsense like getting their hero license. On top of all that, All Might is actually one of the worst teachers I've ever seen in anime. The guy has a blatant disregard for Midoriya's health and also barely teaches him anything despite being the only other person who had One For All. Some people say All Might couldn't have helped Deku because he was able to use 100% from the beginning, but I don't think that's true given how badly a young All Might was getting folded by Gran Torino. There's no way you can tell me that All Might just ate Nana's hair and then woke up the strongest person on the planet. That would make zero sense, and if it were true, he would have stomped Gran Torino. The other reason I see people excusing All Might not really teaching Deku is saying that, oh, he's a bad teacher, so he wouldn't be helpful. He's not a good mentor, he's a bad teacher. Don't be! Teaching is a skill just like any other. The man had literally the best teachers in the country at UA, and he had a great teacher himself in Gran Torino. He could have absolutely put in the effort to learn how to be a more effective mentor to Deku. Hell, even if he did have instant mastery of One For All, he could have asked Gran Torino for ideas on how to teach. And probably the worst part about All Might's mentorship is that he has no regard for Deku's health. Deku overworks himself constantly, and the first time he uses his quirk during the entrance exam, he breaks his arm. But instead of scolding him and trying to get him to learn how to control it better, All Might just congratulates him on doing it right. Imagine if your football coach taught you how to throw a football, but only in a way where you broke your wrist. That would be a really terrible coach. The correct reaction is to be horrified at what just happened and forbid Deku from using the quirk until he can properly control it. And later, Deku was this close to losing his ability in his arms forever, and that could have easily been avoided if All Might had just been like, hey, Gran Torino, how do you think I should train this guy? And helped Midoriya earlier. All Might does see himself in Deku and sees his own tendency to overwork and push himself beyond limits, but this is not healthy. It's downright stupid. You can't get better or train as effectively if you're breaking your limbs all the time, and there's no way you can protect the peace that way. All Might handpicked his successor, but didn't give him any of the tools necessary to make him successful. I don't know if that makes him an overall failure of a hero. While he was active, the country was peaceful, and All For One was imprisoned. But when it came to ensuring long-term peace, helping the next generation, ushering a lasting peace for society, All Might was undoubtedly a failure. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing, liking, and hitting the bell. Only 4% of my viewers are subscribed, and I make Avatar and anime content 2 to 3 times a week, so hop in, enjoy the ride. Let me know what you think of All Might, and that's all for today. Until next time.